right, as we come to the end of the week here, at least in Sydney. How you doing, Ed?
I'm living the dream, Robbie. How you doing down there, down under?
I'm really good, man. I'm excited to be doing today's show. I've got a controversial topic that goes to the very heart of the unspoken truth. So I'm really excited to be bringing that to the audience and be sharing my views of that. But more importantly, I want to get the views of the audience, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it as well, because I'm very conflicted by this topic, and I really don't know what to think about it, so I'm looking forward to the discussion on that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Unspoken Truth. My name's Robert Bruss, and I am your host, and I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Edward Anderson from Minnesota. He's there in the past, on the 24th of May. I'm here on the 25th of May in the future, where the future's looking bright. If this is your first time here at The Unspoken Truth, we look at mainstream media and what's going on in the world, and we like to pull back the curtain on what's really happening and give you the unspoken truth. So come on over and join us for an hour or so. Have a little bit of fun with us. Have a laugh. Let us know where you're from in the comments, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on the topics that we're discussing as well. We've got a lot to cover on today's show, so let's get straight into it, Ed. The topic I want to talk about is the Australian government is pushing really hard to get Julian Assange released, and I want to know if you think this guy is a hero or a villain, because as I said, I'm like super conflicted about this guy, but it goes to the very heart of unspoken truth, deep state, silencing people that they don't like, and it's a very risky proposition. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and we'll have a bit of a laugh there as well. And we were discussing the markets yesterday and talking about them busting through the support levels that have been in place for a little while. It looks like they're about to go lower, and it's the market limbo. How low can we go? That's the question. You need to protect yourself and get your stops in place, or maybe reverse your position and get into a short position, but don't do anything that we say. Just have a look at the analysis and make your own decisions and your own judgments with your own money. But we think the market's going to bust through this level, and it's going to go much lower. And it looks like it's set for a $1,500 drop, or 1,500 point drop rather. So that's a pretty scary proposition of what's actually happening. Ed, how are you today, mate? I just want to get your thoughts before we kick off today's show and get into it.
Well, shout out to all my friends in the Hey Ed WhatsApp group. And, Rob, I always suspected that you were a conflicted man. Now it comes out.
I have a deep sense of justice, right? I'm a law-abiding person and a rule-following person, but then I say at the same time, I contradict myself by saying, don't do anything the government says. They're a bunch of liars. They're a bunch of fools. But I also believe we need to live in a structured society as well. Otherwise, it'll be total chaos.
Well, context is everything, right? Context makes all the difference. So I can't wait. I mean, I got a lot of things I want to say on your topic, but I want to hear your say first. So,
well, I don't have a lot to say about it other than let's get into it. So the Australian government has been pushing pretty hard to have Julian Assange released, and as I was Googling quickly, just to get my facts straight, he was in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years, right? And the first part of Google says, Julian Assange, when Julian Assange was disguised as a motorcycle courier and first walked up to the steps of the Ecuadorian embassy behind Harrods in central London and asked for asylum, few people, including him, didn't think that it would be 7 years before he left there and left the front door there. So Wikileaks kicked off in 2006 and didn't really get that much momentum until really about 2010 with the Chelsea Manning files, and that person released all of the footage of what was actually going on in Iraq. So just in the last couple of weeks, really, the Australian government has been pushing to have him released. Enough's enough. Those charges that were put against him were not real. That was all a ruse to get him into jail, into custody, so the Americans could extradite him and then put him in jail for 175 years, which is really, me catching you up on that story because you've probably forgotten about it because it fell off the mainstream media that way for pretty quickly. But when you think about it, Julian Assange was he's the OG unspoken truth guy. He's the one who he created WikiLeaks and took all the whistleblower files and put them on the internet for everybody to see. And then the people that were having the whistle blown on them simply didn't like it. And the full force of the governments came down on him. And he's disclosing secret documents, he's disclosing top secret documents, video, damning footage. And all of the content that he released in relation to the Chelsea Manning Iraq files, when you look through that content and you see all of that information, I think, well, you know, if American soldiers are committing war crimes and they're doing the wrong thing and they're fighting outside the laws of armed conflict, they should be held to account. And if you knew about it, if the US government knew about it and covered it up, what the hell? That's where I'm conflicted, right? Should they be releasing that type of information that this is going on, but then that they're highlighting that the government knew about it but didn't do anything about it? So why is it rules for thee and then rules for me? That's the thing that I'm so conflicted about. It's like a really bad thing. And I'm not sure if it's a good idea if he should be released. I'm not sure if he has done the right thing or not done the right thing. I'd love to hear your comments in the YouTube stream here. And Ed, what do you think, man? Should he be locked in a deep dark hole? Should he stay where he is, or should he be released?
Well, I have to confess that I too have been, I've been on both sides of that issue, and adamantly, I've been going back and forth, because my original thought was, yeah, just put a bullet in this guy's head, just walk up behind him, one of you CIA guys, and take out your 22 and put a bullet in the back of his skull.
That's when you had faith in the CIA and the FBI and all those authorities. Yeah,
that's right. But the idea that the top secret documents were being released, because apparently a lot of those documents did reveal some of our sources overseas and put their lives at risk. Operatives that we were using to get information, and for me, that is a red line. When you start to putting people's lives at risk, people who were acting on our behalf at the risk of their own lives, and you reveal them as sources, okay, that is a deal breaker for me. Now, but
what if those people are doing the wrong thing? It always. Here's the thing, man. Like you can't break the law to enforce the law. I see the policeman on the side on the footpath on his motorcycle blocking the footpath with his speed gun, and he's trying to enforce the law with his speed gun. But he's if I park my motorbike or my car on the footpath like that, I'd be fined straight away and towed away. But he's breaking the law to enforce the law, and that's what Julian Assange is doing, right? He's breaking the law to try and have some law enforced.
And this is where context is everything, right? So, but apparently what he did in the initial release, he didn't discriminate. He just put everything out there. I could see, so on the one hand, yeah, if he's revealing stuff that people are doing illegally and not in our interest, and they're keeping it secret, yeah, in that case, in that sense, he's a hero. But there were many cases when, I'm sure there were cases where, we had sources in Iraq who were helping our soldiers, avoid where the mines were and when the next terrorist attack were coming. And he didn't discriminate. He just threw it all out there. So you're right. I want to interject there in that point that you're making and see your thoughts here, because what's the difference between the withdrawal from Afghanistan and what he did then? What he did was at a different kind of scale, I suppose, because he's got the documents and the information about individuals. But when the American government decided to withdraw from Afghanistan, they just closed the gates and went, bad luck, get on the plane, get out, and got the hell out of there and left everything behind. And then they left literally thousands and thousands of what the Taliban would call collaborators in place. And those people had to prove that they worked for the American government to get the hell out of there, otherwise they're going to be persecuted by the Taliban, and rightly so, right? But the same thing actually happened, but no one was held to account. The people that were responsible and oversaw all of that are still in place. The withdrawal from Afghanistan is going to go down as one of the most disgraceful events in American history. That was a disgrace. We should be ashamed of ourselves.
It's hard to believe we're living through those times, right? Like, they're the things you read about in history. The withdrawal from Saigon. There's the famous video of the CH-46 coming over the top and then evacuating people as the Vietnamese took over and made that happen. The same thing happened in Afghanistan, but we lived through it. We saw it with our own eyes.
I actually saw the original one.
If you live long enough, you see everything twice. You see.
Right. That was 1972.
There you go.
It was. Well, there were a few differences this time around. This time around, when we were heading out the door, we didn't. Well, we didn't leave the names of our collaborators. We didn't give them a list of our collaborators. We left them behind, which is bad enough, right? But we didn't actually tell them like Assange did. Give them the names of
No, they did that. They had all the biometric scanners and stuff that knew, and they had the databases of everything. That was all left behind.
Oh, okay.
But that's again, is that I can't verify any of that, and you have to make some assumption that there was literally thousands of people working for the coalition there in Afghanistan, and the Taliban knew who they were.
Well, then I think they should just give Julian Assange a few roommates from our Joint Chiefs of Staff. Hey, lock those guys up too, or ban those guys. Look, there is no accountability. Accountability is everything, right? And so this is not like I'm conflicted because on the one hand, on the other hand, I think context makes all the difference in the world.
But why do you think context matters? Because of you're risking people's lives? Is that what you mean? You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be risking people's lives.
Yeah, I do not like. I do think there's a place for secrecy. I do think there are some things the public should not know. I actually do believe, but those are extreme cases. Okay, that's a sliver of the. Other than that, there should be full transparency. But if we have Navy SEALs doing covert operations overseas and their lives are at risk, and secrecy is important in order to keep them safe, in order to get the job done, I'm all for it. Okay, so there are cases. I think they're extreme, but there are cases when I'm okay with the public not knowing about it, not knowing about things.
I held a security clearance in the Navy. I had a secret security clearance there. And when you go to the next, it's like confidential, secret, top secret, and then SCI stuff. There was never a need for me to have a TS clearance. And even doing what I was doing with electronic warfare, sitting on that set and doing all those sorts of things, there was no requirement for that. So you only, it's the need to know scenario, right? But unfortunately, people seem to think that when you have a security clearance, you're learning state secrets about things that you just can't find as open source. But the reality is the vast majority of content that I had access to, and in the ops room of a guided missile frigate, there's the sonar control room out the back of the ops room. So the ops room's one big room. It's probably not much bigger than the room I'm sitting in, actually. And the sonar control room's like kind of where my kitchen is there. And there's a sonar set in there. And there's a safe. And the safe had 3 drawers, and you open the top, and that's where all the secret documents are. But the vast majority of the documents only contained open source information. And to your point, Ed, the context of them being together in that one book gave it was the reason that it had the clearance associated with it. But you could go onto the internet right now, onto janes.com, and find the vast majority of information that we had access to, which was classified. But the context of that was different. And you would see extra information in there that you didn't have in a Jane's book, because we had all of the Jane's publications, and you'd have all of the secret documents that went with it, and you could see the differences between these two things. But then when you sat down at a console with your headset on and you were doing something for real, I guess that's when you're doing it in real time, and that's where you need that actual security clearance. But a lot of what is released by whistleblowers and a lot of what is said, as you look at classified information, I kind of see that and just go, well, so what? I could find the vast majority of that on the internet. So to your point about secrecy, there is definitely a place for that in government. There's definitely a requirement for that in government. If the cops are going to go and collar a perpetrator for something, what you don't want to do is telegraph that operation to the world. They want to keep that to themselves so they can roll up on that guy, use speed, surprise, and violence of action. And everything from low-level police in law enforcement to high-level Navy SEAL type stuff, that requires secrecy for sure. But there's so much that is classified in government. There's so much that causes all sorts of problems. That happened with all of the Rand Paul Fauci files. he's been asking for the last 6 months for all of the documents to say, were we funding the research, the gain-of-function research in Wuhan? No, we weren't. Yes, we were. No, we weren't. Yes, we were. Show me the documents. Tell me if we were funding it. Just tell me. Just show me. No, they're classified. You don't need to know. They're not classified. They're on the public record. You just won't give me the documents. So they're hiding behind all of these things and using these things as an instrument of delay. Yep. And it's a shitty thing.
Yeah, and Mark told me that my volume is really low, so I just Rob taught me the other day that I have a volume mic on my microphone, so I just turned it up. So, let me know if that works better, Mark.
Mark's listening in, but it's not working for him.
I'm always I'm always listening with this audio stuff. But to your point, Rob, this is a lot of these questions are difficult questions, but I am a libertarian at heart, and I think that transparency is always best. Except for those cases that we just outlined. We'll give them a carve-out, okay? But this is, for those hard questions, this is why, in theory, we're supposed to have oversight. We're supposed to have these committees in our governments to go into those top secret briefings with it, and so that, they could be, thank you, Mark, so that there could be some kind of intermediary kind of saying, hey, wait, these people shouldn't know this. So in theory, these oversight committees are supposed to solve that issue for us. I guess a lot of this is to what degree do you trust your government? And and the older
trust me, I'm from the government.
yeah, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help you.
That's how it goes.
I'm here to tell you the truth. Just trust me. But I do think the public in general these days is much more skeptical of their government than when I grew up, than when I was a kid.
Yeah, definitely.
But the government has earned it.
I was watching yesterday my morning workout in the gym. I was watching and listening to Patrick Bet-David's podcast. I'll put a link to this in the description as well. And he had a fellow on there named Sebastian Gorka. Do you know who that guy is?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so Seb was on there talking about a range of different things, and he was talking about how Hillary Clinton's campaign spent $1.2 billion to try and beat them, and they'd spent $800 million, and Hillary spent $1.2 billion. Did you see the interview?
I didn't see that one, but I've heard him make that comment before. Yeah,
it's really good because Pat seems to be getting these Trump insiders on his show, and what it's doing is it's pulling back the curtain behind what actually went on there, so you can see how they were sabotaged at every point. And essentially, you can kind of summarize it by saying that there was 4,000 odd people, and it's just this massive human resource thing that they have to deal with, right? And you don't think about that as the scale of government. My missus, I've mentioned a couple of times, worked for New South Wales government, and her department is relatively small. They had, every 6 months they get together because they're kind of dispersed around New South Wales, and the last 2 days she's been out of the home office here and gone over to Parramatta, and there's about 20 of them that get together that manage all of these contracts and to deal with all of these things. And inside of that, that's their little cell, and inside of that there's more, and then there's more, and then there's more, and there's more, right? There's like 10 cells associated with these legal, and then there's canteens, there's all these other things that are associated with it. So across that Department of Education in New South Wales is the biggest department. It employs the most people. It's 40,000 people or something like that. It's a huge department. And it was really good when Seb was talking yesterday, they came to power and there's like 4,000 people that they have to deal with there immediately. And when they talk about draining the swamp, that's the swamp. And what happens is these people in these bureaucratic jobs are there, but they're like, you know what, fuck this guy, he's a fucking dickhead, I didn't vote for him, I don't like him. And at every point they drag the chain, they sabotage it, and they do their job, they do what they're supposed to do, but they make it really painful. It's like nails on a chalkboard type thing. And he was saying that was the mistake they made. And they were unable to drain the swamp because they were consistently having to deal with these problems and these individuals. And he said if they win next time round, they're already locked and loaded with a whole bunch of people that are going to occupy those key positions that will not necessarily support Trump, but they support America, and they put America first. And he said that's how we get back on track, because the people that are there, they're either one of two people. They either love America or they hate America. And then, so I was listening to that, and he's a deeply patriotic guy, but he's not even an American, right? So he was born in Hungary, and he went to school in England, and he trained a whole lot of Americans in Europe, and then won a contract over there in America, and brought his family and stuff, and then became an American citizen. But it's not like he's patriotic, I bleed red, white and blue type thing. But he just believes in a free market, and he believes in the American idea. You don't have to be patriotic and have a flag in your house or out the front to actually be patriotic. Just he just wants a better life for himself, his family, and the people that live in that country, because it's, apparently the greatest country in the world, or it could be. And you sort of see, he has bought into the ideals. And, it's a classic case of immigration going to America, and immigration being responsible for that, because him and his wife were he says that they were taking the little kids to school. They were 5 and 7, but they would holiday in America because his wife is American. And the little kids are like all running around, they're all happy, and then all of these Hungarian kids are like head down and grey, and all of this communist ideology hadn't been stamped out, even though communism had been dead for 15 years. And he was like, let's get the hell out of here. And that's when they made the choice to move to America. So I look at all of that, and I look at Julian Assange and think, is he a hero or a villain? Because we talk about people like Sebastian who are in government trying to do the right things. And then Peter Navarro was on that podcast recently as well. And when you hear the insiders about what they were trying to do to make the economy better, to make the country better, to try and do all these things, and they're really coming from a genuine place of kindness and love and help, and they're trying to do the right thing. And then you see someone like Julian Assange, who is the opposite of all of those things. And the result of what Julian Assange does sabotages everything that those people are trying to do in government. But it's not those people like Seb or Peter Navarro or Donald Trump who are doing these things. It's the bureaucracy and the deep state underneath it all that are covering all of these things up. It's not the politicians themselves doing it. It's the bureaucrats that are actually responsible for it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of where the conflict lies for me as well. Like, it's very conflicting to say, should he release those secrets? Should he tell us about those things? Should he do that? And here we are on a channel called The Unspoken Truth. And it made me question myself. If a whistleblower came to me and said, hey, Rob, I've got a story for you. Would you do a podcast with me, or would you tell the world about this story? I actually had it happen to me yesterday. Yeah. In a very small scale, in a very small way. So when I was out, I sat in the barber's chair, and the guy said to me, what would you like? And I said, I'll have an Ed Anderson special. He opened his phone, he found a picture of Ed Anderson, he went bang, and he got the clippers and cut my hair, and it was perfect. But we were chatting, he's been cutting my hair for years. We were chatting, and he said, I've been fucking hosed over again by these IT companies. And I said, calm down, tell me the story, what's wrong? And he said that he'd spent $18,000 on these broken promises, and all he got was, he goes, look, I got this slide deck and this prototype and this document, and they charged me $18,000, and then they told me to go away. I was like, man, did you get a contract on the front end about deliverables and deliveries? And he goes, no, but I want to go to the media, and I want to tell people, and I want to show people that these guys are scammers and that. And I said, well, I've got a channel called The Unspoken Truth. Do you want to come on and tell me about it? And he's like, yes, I want to come on. And I said, all right, no worries. Here's all my details. He's like, oh yeah, but, and all of a sudden he's like, but it sort of begs the question for me, like, if I get somebody like that on the show and we're talking about some low-level crankiness that he's got around non-delivery of products or services, should I be telling the world about that? Has that company done, thousands of good things over the years and helped thousands of people in the process of doing that? And they, one bad experience destroys everything there. I don't know the full story behind all of those things. So I'm kind of conflicted even at that level. What do you do? How does an investigative journalist handle the ethics of all of these problems? And the reality is, I don't know, tell me what you think here, Ed. If you just go out there and tell the truth, and by telling the truth, you're just more empowered. And it doesn't matter who gets upset about the truth, because eventually it all comes out anyway. And there's nothing you can do to hide from it.
Yeah, the problem there, though, is you don't know what the truth is right away. And you heard his story, but then you were smart enough to ask a few probing questions that you played devil's advocate. Well, and when you talk, and that was a small issue, right? It's just a disgruntled consumer. When you have someone
releasing state secrets,
right?
That's no small issue.
Yeah, that's a bigger decision. Okay, well, do you approve? I'd want to see some stuff. I'd like to, talk to him, see whether this guy is a nut job and just, an ideologue, or if he's a reasonable person. When we saw those whistleblowers, in front of Congress the other day talking about, the FBI. You can tell these were reasonable guys, and they backed up everything that they said. You don't treat all whistleblowers, quote, whistleblowers, the same way, right?
Well, aren't they supposed to have protection?
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. Like, if you're in the FBI, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if you go to a congressman and you say, yeah, I've got some information, and the congressman agrees to take you on, yeah, you're supposed to have protection. Yeah.
Well, think about it. If you were in any business, any industry, it was just after 9/11, and all of the chaos of the world made us think that we were going to be attacked. The attack was imminent, right? The fundamentalists and the extremists were going to come and attack us, but there's no fundamentalists and extremists here in Australia. There's a few nut jobs, but they're not fundamentalists and they're not extreme either. They're just nut jobs, right? There's loonies everywhere you go. It doesn't matter where you are, what country in the world that you are. And they're not like a terrorist threat. And there's like billions and billions and billions of dollars spent on anti-terrorism operations here in Australia, and it doesn't prevent anything because there's no real threat. Nothing ever really happens. Like the amount of money that they spend on something like that, trying to scare you into compliance and scare you into submission, is just unbelievably ridiculous. But there was a lot of signage around, particularly around the airport. And I remember the signs would say, if you see something, say something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you see something, say something, and you won't get in trouble for it. If you went over to one of to the border police while you were at the airport and you saw an unattended bag and you went, hey mate, that bag's been there for like 10 minutes. I don't know if that guy went to the bathroom or something. Do you want to just have a checkers? You go over and have a look, and the copper's not going to get angry at you for saying something like that. But in any workplace, if you see something, you should speak up. If you see sexual harassment, if you see someone being a jerk, you should speak up and do something about it. But these FBI guys did that and got crushed.
Yes, and again, it's shameful and it's disgraceful. And the FBI, this is the arrogance of the deep state, right? It's, the deep state prides itself on being, in the shadows. They don't want to be overt with what they're doing, with the bad stuff that they're doing. That's why the 2020 election was so important, because they came out of the woodwork to go after Trump. They blatantly, this issue with this fake dossier, it was corrupt from day one, and now it's been revealed. Now they got away with it because the media was carrying their water. They were on their side. But as we talk about, the truth always eventually comes out, with those kind of things. But I think they're saying that's right. A time will pass. People will forget about it, and these people are arrogant. They're loaded with hubris, and they're prideful, and they assume they can get away with it because they have gotten away with it for so long. Look at JFK. They've been emboldened. Yeah, they feel emboldened. They can do pretty much. They're bulletproof. Yeah, what's going to happen? They'll make a little noise. They'll have a few photo sessions and a few congressional hearings. Then people will forget about it. The 24-hour cycle will come along. There'll be some kind of a mass shooting, and people will change their focus. And I think that's the way they think. They think that they're impervious, and you can see why they would have that feeling, because there's never any accountability for the bad acts that take place. I mean, is Jim Comey going to end up in jail? I mean,
play a little scenario with accountability here for me, yeah? Just play along for me. So I'm a private pilot. I decide that I want to go flying, it's a beautiful autumn day. I want to go flying down the south coast of New South Wales. By the way, I've done all of this scenario before, right? So I rock up to the airport at the flying school where I learned to fly. I hand over my license. I show them my medical. I tell them, which airplane am I allocated? They say this one here. I go, okay, cool. They give me the keys. They give me the maintenance release. I go out the back. I fly. I don't need to file a flight plan. But what I do is I tell them when I'm going to be back, and I told my missus when I'm going to be back. So I'll be back in like 3 hours. If I'm not back, call me. Yeah, and I'll cancel my SAR watch. So I'll put my search and rescue watch that I'll be back in, 3 hours, put my SAR watch in. I walk out to the gate, I swipe my card, open there, go to the plane. I start the plane, I taxi out and I fly. And as I'm traveling south, I land the plane and I land, 20 minutes down the road in Wollongong Airport. flying around there. It's beautiful, taking in the view, not really doing anything, not in a hurry to be anywhere. I land the plane, get out of the plane, park the plane, leave the keys in the plane, and say, fuck it, man, I couldn't be fucked flying back. I'm just going to catch a train back. So I get on the train, I cancel my SAR watch, and I get on the train and come back to Sydney. I don't even go back to the airport. I just go home. Just leave the plane in Wollongong. And then the flying school rings me up and says, hey, well, you all right? Yeah, I'm good. Where are you? Oh, I'm at home in Cronulla. Well, where's the plane? Oh, I left it in Wollongong, man. Well, what do you mean you left it in Wollongong? Well, I left it in Wollongong. Well, why'd you leave it in Wollongong? Because I just couldn't be fucked flying it back. Well, you can't do that. Well, I did. Well, you can't do that. You have to pay for it. No, I don't have to pay for it. So it seems like a ridiculous scenario, but that's exactly what happened in Afghanistan. But it happened to the tune of billions and billions and billions of dollars. Hey man, where's that Black Hawk that we had? That was, side number 123 ABC. That was the one at Bagram Air Force Base, wasn't it? Yeah. That one and 9 others that we left behind. And I'm talking about I'm making light of it, with a Cessna that's worth 200 grand. But if you're talking about a Black Hawk that's worth $30 million, and there's dozens of them left behind, and there's all the equipment and the night vision gear and all of that, no one's held accountable.
Oh, no.
No one's held accountable.
No, that's right.
No one.
And you're generally saying, but we made sure those planes were they weren't operational when we left.
Yeah, that's what they said. But then in the next video, I see the Black Hawk flying around.
Exactly. Yeah, and we went on all the tires on the Humvees, and we punched holes. They're
so they changed tires.
The line. Yeah. 40 million rounds of ammunition. That's nothing. That's
that's peanuts, man. We use that on a Friday afternoon before a weekend.
That's right. It again, disgraceful and shameful, and they made it sound like it was standard operating procedure and business as usual and nothing extraordinary here, and not to mention the fact that we left like a $5 billion military air base, large enough to handle C-130s landing. You need an extra big strip for that, right? And with a really high quality strip, fully intact. It'd
be awesome when the Chinese military go in there and start mining the rare earth minerals from Afghanistan. They've got the ready-made air base to get their transport aircraft in and out of there and bring everything in and out of there.
That's right. Disgraceful. And no accountability. Not one general. They've even asked generals, point blank, so do you think it was mishandled? Do you have any regrets? No regrets.
No, I'm good. That's what the commander-in-chief told me to do, so I did it. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, and they asked Biden the same thing. No regrets.
I think of Joe Biden as like a moron, right? But the moron has the idea of saying, hey, we're going to pull out of Afghanistan. Everyone goes, oh, no worries, boss. That's what we're going to do. We're going to pull out of Afghanistan. So I predict that they knew about it for a really long time, because he's saying, on this date, I want you out of there.
Yes.
And so he's given them ample notice. He didn't not give them notice.
Right. He gave them like 4. He gave this again. He gave them like 4 months heads up. On the first, we're out. So
that's Joe Biden calling now.
Sorry, man. They're always listening, guys. Always turn off your phone, even when your phone is off. They're still listening. First of all, but let's make it clear. Biden has not had an independent thought for
exactly. Okay. Hey, boss, if you want to pull out of Afghanistan, we need to give everybody about 3 months' notice, yeah? And we'll do it after the elections and do all that. All right, no worries. Can you begin the process? 3 days before they're ready to hit the deadline, they're like, oh shit, we forgot that the boss told us to pull out of there. And then they're just scrambling like a bunch of crazy people. And then they had the biggest airlift in worldwide history, getting hundreds of thousands of people out of there in this massive airlift, but then they left all the gear behind. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
No, good. The military is supposed to be the last one out, right?
Yes.
You get the civilians out first. You get your confidential informants out first. You get your civilians out first, and then the rest of you get out. The last guy to leave should be whatever general in charge of that base.
Turning the lights off on the way up. There you go.
Yeah. That's not what they did. It's disgraceful. It's right behind Benghazi. Benghazi is still in the
That's just shocking, isn't it? Yeah, and once again, no one required to be held to account to it, even though we know who's actually responsible for all of those things. So I come all the way full circle here for a set in this little segment and say, is Julian Assange a hero or a villain? Before I answer that and before you give me your answer, I think that what Julian Assange did was highlighted the deep state that had existed since World War II. Really, that's really when the CIA really come to life, and they started collaborating with everybody on the wharves in New York, all of the criminals, the mafia and the mob, and Whitney Webb describes that really well in her books, and she talks about that a lot as well. That's really where it started, and it gave rise to all of this blackmail and this Epstein style stuff that's happening. You look at Jeffrey Epstein and blackmailing Bill Gates for having an affair with somebody, something as low level and as trivial as that. Bill Gates worried about his reputation, then having to do what this crazy person is needing them to do. And, he's like the worst of worst criminals. Jeffrey Epstein is like horrible when you look into that. But the media won't investigate anything that happened before he was convicted of a sex crime. But before he was convicted of a sex crime in the 2000s, well before that, he was like a career criminal. He was a financier, and he was funding all sorts of radical projects, but using blackmail to actually get the money to make it happen. And in yesterday's interview with Sebastian Gorka, he talks about, you're not supposed to say his name on this platform. Yeah, he talks about the Hungarian Jewish guy. And they show an interview of him when they're asking him a question. So you were a Nazi collaborator and you helped repossess Jewish wealth, did you? And he laughs and says, yeah. So that's where do you think he got all of his money from to fund all of these leftists and all of these evil prosecutors, yeah, implementing their ideals. Okay. He was a Nazi collaborator, man.
Just to be sure, so to be clear, you're talking about Mr. S, not
yes.
Gorka. You're talking about Mr.
Yeah, not Gorka. Yeah, Mr. S, and it is just a horrendous thing that's going on. And I think what Julian Assange did was showed us that all of that existed. And before he came along with WikiLeaks, and before he highlighted, hey, you a whistleblower? Have you got information? Show me. Put it here. I'll put it on the website and show the whole world. Before, no one had done that. And he kind of highlighted that around the deep state, there's an electric fence. Yeah. And if you go too close to that electric fence and touch it, you'll be cancelled. Yeah. You'll be off to the digital gulag in today's day and age. You'll be sent off. You'll be cancelled completely. No more social media for you. No more communicating for you. Lots of surveillance on your phone. Lots of surveillance on everything else that you do. You won't be able to do business. We'll take away your domain names, and we'll stop everything from everything that you want to do because you're a naughty boy or a naughty girl. And that's you touching the electric fence. Yeah. He actually turned the fence off a little bit and jumped over it and went on the other side of it and went, look, here I am. And then everybody around the world went, no, you don't. No, you don't. And then they built another fence around him and locked him in there. And, is he a hero or a villain? On the unspoken truth here, I have to take a stand. I can't be wishy-washy and say, no, he's not a hero, and no, he's not a villain. I have to take a stand and pick one or the other. It's a binary choice. And I think I have to, as I get older in my life and more mature, and I have more experiences, I think I come to the point where I have to say he's a hero, man, because he's the one that highlighted all of this deep state stuff. And while I don't agree with some of his methodology, I do agree with what he did. I do agree with him highlighting war crimes. I do agree with him highlighting the hypocrisy of government and bringing all of it to light. And I think the world would be a very different place if WikiLeaks never existed, because we would all be deaf, dumb, and blind to the fact that Twitter was created by the FBI and the CIA, so was Facebook, so is Google, so is YouTube. All of these platforms are controlled by deep state. And that's evidenced by that is I can't come on here and say whatever the hell I want. I can't, otherwise I'll be off to the digital gulag. And that's because deep state doesn't want me to say those things. They don't want me to be out there with a platform telling the world that they're evil and they're doing things. There's rules for thee and then rules for me. So I despite all of my misgivings, I've decided that he's actually a hero, man, because he's the OG that highlighted it for us. So what do you think, Ed? Have you got any closing remarks on that?
Yeah, in aggregate, I would have to agree with you. In aggregate, I would consider him a hero as well. If for no other reason than the fact that people are so much more aware these days. I mean, when this first happened, what was it, like 10, 11 years ago? When
Yeah, it's quite a while ago. Well, WikiLeaks kicked off in 2006, I want to say. I think that's
Yeah, okay.
when it was.
Okay. So and now we have kind of a normal, one of your normals. We have kind of a normal here where because of with the advent of alternative media, people like us, people can get other sources and they can find sources that they trust over the course of time. You experience, you listen, see whether they're saying the truth, and make a decision. So he was kind of cutting edge that way. He was like the forerunner of the modern day whistleblower, right? If for no other reason, he's making all of these deep state actors look over their shoulder a little bit more, and I love that. Anything we can do to make these guys nervous. And by the way,
Hero or villain?
hero. Yeah.
Oh, he's on that side of the fence as well.
I told you, in aggregate, I think is
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it feels hard. It actually feels difficult to say whether he's good or he's bad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. All right, great conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here at The Unspoken Truth, this is kind of a window into what we talk about. Usually it's a little bit more related to news and to headlines, although that is news and headlines of what's going on. It's from a couple of days ago, of course. But we generally have these conversations in a longer form to get it all off our chests and get it all out in the open, and we'd love to hear from you. I see a mate of mine down in Melbourne there, Billy. He wants to come on the show, and Billy's he's a long-time conspiracy theorist, and he's got some great stuff to share as well. I think he'd be an awesome guest to have on the show. So I'll reach out to you, Billy, a bit later and bring you on the show, man, and we'll have some fun as well. Before we go into the next segment, Ed, I just wanted to remind the audience that today's show is brought to you by you. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au. All right, Ed, how low can the markets go, baby? Let's do the market limbo. Have you got a video for us? Have you got something to share?
Yeah, I do. Let's take a look. And then there's bad news. Today there is some bad news. All right, so let's talk about it. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about an article that's out of Zero Hedge, and it highlights what's going on right now, and it's not good. So let's get right to it. And by the way, look at this article. Terrified of a Bud Light situation, Target pulls Pride Month products in certain stores amid boycott calls. Remember my video from the other day talking about this issue at Target? And so I don't know whether someone showed them my video, but apparently they're starting to reverse course at least a little bit on their woke stance. So maybe that's a good sign. People power, right? Okay, let's get back to it. Okay, so this is the article I want to talk to you about. Futures slide, European stocks tumble on barrage of global bad news. U.S. equities futures drift lower for the second day following a deluge of bad news across global markets, driving European stocks to their biggest drop in 2 months. Now, it's useful for you to know that Wall Street sees what's going on in Europe as kind of a canary in the coal mine. Usually, really bad macroeconomic news happens in Europe first, and then it spills over to America. That's just the way it is. So traders pay very close attention to what's going on in Europe, and then they extrapolate that to what is bound to happen over here. So pushing copper below $8,000 and snuffing out this year's gains in China's equities. As of 7:30 Eastern time, and I'm recording this a few hours after that, S&P futures were down 0.4% to 41.43, following Tuesday's 1.1% drop, with NASDAQ futures sliding the same amount. And Bitcoin got the usual Asian session trapdoor as gold rose. Now let's talk about gold for a quick second here, okay? Central banks around the world are loading up on gold, mostly in countries other than North America, like the US, Canada, and some of the Western countries. But everyone else in the world, they're loading up on gold in a very big way. So our governments are not doing what they really should be doing, at least in the West here, in the US. They're not, okay. But what else is new, right? But I do know that Poland, for example, they're resuming their purchase of gold. Here we see a chart of the E-mini futures. In pre-market trading, mega cap tech was mixed with Microsoft and Amazon recovering, while the rest are lower. NVIDIA Corp, a stock at the center of the artificial intelligence frenzy, lost almost 1%. Regional banks are mostly higher as PacWest continues to sell more assets to meet liquidity needs. Why this is positive remains unclear, while large cap banks are lagging. Here are the most recent notable pre-market movers, and then go through some of the movers. But let's talk about this PacWest for a second. Let's take a look at a chart of this guy. Okay, so this is PacWest, and it couldn't get anything going today. It tried to add a little bit of a rally yesterday, but gave it all back. But let's look at a 3-month chart. Just look at the devastation here. Okay, so PacWest announced that they're selling some of their assets in order to clean up their balance sheets. Okay, and Wall Street took that, as good news for some reason, and had a little bit of a bounce there, but it couldn't go very far, and now it's rolling over again. Now, let me ask you, okay, if PacWest is selling its, quote, assets, which assets do you think they're selling? The good stuff or the bad stuff? Well, nobody's going to buy the bad stuff, right? So they're selling the good stuff. So they're resorting to selling their good assets in order to keep their head above water. Now, this is not a good sign. Listen, whether it's you or whether it's a corporation or whether it's government, if you have to raise money, what do you prefer to sell first? You want to sell your bad stuff, right? You only sell your good stuff when you have to sell it. And that's what we're starting to see going on with these banks, is they're having to sell their good stuff. Their garbage stuff, like mortgage-backed securities, they can't sell them. Eventually, I think the government's going to have to come in and bail them out again. They're going to take on these mortgage-backed securities like the Fed did last month with several banks. This trend is going to continue, where the government is going to have to step in if they want to save any of these banks. And chances are they're going to just let a lot of these banks fail because they want to. It's part of their agenda. Let's go back to the article. There were plenty of reasons for investors to be pessimistic, according to Bloomberg. In the U.S., there was little progress in the debt ceiling talks, and investors are increasingly worried about a default. Yields on securities maturing June 6th topped 6% Tuesday, compared with bills maturing May 30th that are yielding about 2%. China's sputtering economy and worsening geopolitical ties also hurt sentiment, and UK inflation came in higher than all economists' expectations, setting the stage for a painful encounter with stagflation. Meanwhile, as discussed earlier, Europe's luxury bubble indeed appears to be bursting, as luxury stocks, one of this year's most popular trades, extended losses. European real estate and car makers slumped on concerns that UK interest rates are heading higher. And they highlight, this guy here. World's richest man sees $11 billion in wealth wiped out after a stock rout in European luxury goods. All right, so who's the richest guy in the world now? They keep changing, right? Okay, I confess I don't know who that guy is. Okay, so remember when I told you that the first category to go when economics get bad, when the economy gets bad, are the luxury items, the luxury category. Okay, you can check that box. Done. Okay, so I'm not going to go over the rest of the article here because I've got to get back to my discussion with Rob. But you can go to Zero Hedge and read the rest if you want. But let's take a quick look at what's going on in the market. Okay, so I'm recording this around noon time. So the market, so the day is about halfway through. You see the market at the moment is down 280 points. But look, this is what I meant by there's bad news and then there's really bad news. Let's remind ourselves of what the important levels are. If we look at this 3-month chart, remember I've been telling you to watch this level right here. It looks like 33,000 there. It's really like 32,900. It's just a fraction under that 33,000 level. Well, it broke. And prior to that, this rally here failed to take out the previous rally, and that rally failed to take out the previous rally there. So we see 3 successive lower highs. So if you just draw a line here along these peaks, you see the downward trend. And then if you draw a line along the support levels, an imaginary line, you have what's called a descending triangle. Well, this level, a very important one. We've been watching this level. I told you to watch this level. Well, today we broke it. Next support level is down here at 31,005. That's the next support. Now, it's not going to get there in a straight line, but this is where we're heading. And if you look back further than that, the next support after this one, after 31,005-ish, we'll call it, the next support level is really 29,000. So this little V here that put in, that's the next big support level. Okay, so bad news is starting to accelerate. The street is starting to get wind of everything that we've been talking about for a while now, and important levels are being taken out now. So you got to watch what's going on in this market in here. Now, me, I'm loving this, okay, because I think like a trader. You should think like a trader too. Even if you're not actually trading in an active way, you should think like a trader. And then you make your decisions, accordingly. Now, one final thing. Let's talk about this debt ceiling issue going on at the moment. Okay, now, historically, they always come up with a solution in the 11th hour, right? They come up with a continuing resolution and kick the can down the road, or they negotiate a package where they get the other side to agree to put garbage into the bill in order. They put a lot of goodies into these packages at the very last moment. I want $5 billion to create a lesbian dance theory center in my state. Things like that. They put things into these bills that normally would not pass, but they use these crises in order to get things done that normally they could not get done. These politicians, right? Now, if they do fail to come up with an agreement, if they do fail to raise that debt limit, okay, all bets are off in the markets. But I don't think it would happen. Even if it did happen, they would quickly come up with some kind of a fix. Rob has been talking to us lately about this normalization issue. Normally people would be really scared right now, but we've seen this so many times. We've seen this movie so many times before that we assume what's going to happen. We assume that they're going to come up with a solution in the 11th hour. And that is actually my assumption, that at the last minute, they are going to come up with some kind of a Band-Aid. But the important thing for me, the bottom line are the support levels in the markets. Those are the ones you want to watch. And one that we have been watching for a little while now has been broken as of right now, as I'm making this recording. Let's see what happens next. But listen, things are bad and they're going to get really bad. So you have to start preparing for it. Don't be a victim of this. Take advantage of it. Reduce your exposure to your bank. Buy some gold and silver and establish streams of passive recurring income. Sure.
Well, there we are. Sorry, we were just muted there. Great report, man. Well done.
Oh, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
You have such a knack of. I couldn't help thinking when you were doing that. You don't try and read the tea leaves. What you're doing is so those reports in Zero Hedge are really good. I read them all the time as well. And I like them because they're very factual, right? So they're just telling you, they're saying, here's what happened. Then there's no one in there injecting their opinion. They're just telling you what happened in the market. This is what happened. It went up this much, it went down that much, whatever it is. But then instead of trying to read the tea leaves and predict something, what you do is just go straight to logic. This is how it works. And I think to your point, when you say you got to think like a trader, that's what you don't realize that you're doing it because you're just you, right? And that's how you've done it for the last 30 years of your life. But when I listen to you analyze those articles, I can hear the trader in you because you're looking for the reaction to be long or short in the market about a particular thing, trying to, well, if I was going to get into copper and copper's falling below 8,000, where's the support, the resistance, where's, what's happening with all of these things. So you've got a really great way of distilling down that information, which is very technical, and it seems like gobbledygook to a normal person. If you're not into finance, you're not reading those things, and you don't know how to join all of those dots. I think you do a really good job there. So well done, man.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. That comes from my years. I was a trading instructor for many years, so I had to, over the years, figure out how to take complex situations and boil them down to understandable, lessons.
Do you think we're going to hit that 29,000 mark?
Well, yes, I do. I think that we will, at the very least, I think that we're going to see 25,000 before we see 40,000. So, but yeah.
So we're doing the limbo all the way down there, right? That's how low we're going to go.
Yeah. Well, so much of it is dependent on things that we can't see right now. There's remember, what makes markets or stocks or anything move dramatically in a short period of time are unexpected events. If they're unexpected, that's where you get crashes. That's where you get flash crashes, and that's when you get big breakouts. So surprises are, are by definition, you can't predict them. They're unpredictable. Right? You don't.
Best I can do for you. Well, jokes aside, man, like they put F-16s into the Ukrainian Air Force, and the pilots are now being trained, right? So it's all coming out, man. Pilots are now being trained. So the minute that they launch a Viper from Poland or from Romania, the Russians go, well, good enough for me. Thank you. Here comes your Kinzhal. Eat that.
Yep.
And, suddenly attacking NATO like that, there's a massive... that doesn't seem like an unplausible scenario, but is that something that's big enough to actually shock the markets into a crash down to 25,000?
Try 1,000. Listen, if there is some kind of an EMP event, okay.
I'm not saying a nuclear war. I'm saying if Russia attacked NATO.
Oh, Russia attacked NATO. Yeah, that would be an unexpected event. You would see a crash. Matter of fact, the market would not open up, and the market probably wouldn't open up for probably a week.
It doesn't do that because the market has to get everyone used to the idea, right. The normalcy bias.
That's right. Now, if the market were honest, it would stay open and let the chips fall where they may, right? But we know the market is not honest. The market is, to a large degree, rigged. So the players are going to do whatever they can to protect themselves. But sometimes the events overtake, the best of, circumstances. So if Russia were to attack a NATO country, I mean, look, Poland's a NATO country. If they were to actually attack them, wow. Because because no one would expect that. No one's expecting that would happen. An unexpected event, surprises, is what makes markets have big moves in one direction or another. That would be a surprise. Well,
there's a couple of things in there, right? People have just got such short memories, and it goes to the very heart of that normalcy bias. If you rewind the clock, maybe 6 months ago, that everyone was saying there's no way that F-16s will ever be given to Ukraine because the nose gear on an F-16 can't handle the runways that the Ukrainians have, because they've got Soviet aircraft, which the runways are actually rougher, they're different. The American aircraft need different things. So something as simple as that, they'll say, no. And then footage came out, no, look, years ago, American F-16s landed at the airports that they would be operating out of and whatnot. Okay, cool. So we can operate in Ukraine, but where's all the logistics, supplies, spares, people? That's not going to be in Ukraine. I just don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second, man. They're going to operate from Poland. They're going to operate from Romania, and that's going to make them a target. And the normalcy bias that we have around all of that stuff is going to create huge events. Are there other trigger points? This debt ceiling thing that you're talking about there, I don't think that that's a trigger point for the reason that you said that we've seen this movie so many times before. I did some reading on that and some Googling in and around that. That's like a relic from World War II, man. That's where it was created. The debt ceiling was created in World War II. Like, how much money do you need? This much money. Okay, cool. Don't spend any more than that. All right, cool. That's the ceiling. That's it. And it's stayed in place since then. It's very strange.
Well, why is it strange? Politicians, they have no respect for money.
Right? No, I think it's a strange policy that they had. Like during World War II, it made sense to have that, but after World War II, they never abolished the policy. Well, so it was strange that they had that policy there that causes all of these problems in your government year after year after year.
Well, again, it does make sense if you agree with me that the government is corrupt. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's true. We do know that.
Politicians do not want to be constrained.
But they're constrained by this debt ceiling.
Well, first, they got off the gold standard for that reason, and raise the debt ceiling. These are tricks to allow politicians to keep making bad decisions.
We should do a report. I'll see if I can put together some stuff. We'll do it together on how they took all the gold away from everybody in America in 1934 or 35, was it? 33, yeah. Yeah, and why they did that, and why that, and then in the 1970s when Nixon took everyone off the gold standard there, why they did that, because that shows you how corrupt politicians actually are and how hopeless that they are at managing economies. It's like they put people that are really good at delivering speeches in charge, but they have actually no qualifications or credentials to manage an economy because they've never managed a business. They can't even balance their own checkbook, for heaven's sake. It's ridiculous.
In most cases, it almost doesn't matter who the person is.
Yeah.
It's interchangeable. It's the people behind them. It's the donors and it's the influencers that are behind them that get it. Yeah, we'll get you into power if you promise to vote this way. So again, the deep state. That's right. In the next election, you thought 2020 was bad with the deep state. Wait till the next one, man. 2024 is going to be a doozy. They're going to pull out every dirty trick that they can think of.
Do you think it's the last throw of the dice, man? For the experiment of America?
Well, geez. Hope not. You always listen. We do have our Second Amendment, which means a lot of us do still have our guns, so we have. That
so we'll be right.
However, I think the results of all elections going forward are always going to be questioned. The losers are always, regardless of what side you're on, the loser is always going to doubt whether that person won honestly, because of what has happened. Even if the next election is decided honestly, the other side is going to be suspicious of it. That's the new normal in America for our elections, which is, and that's a result of the disgraceful tactics that they have used now for at least the last 3 election cycles. But the last one was the most obvious one. When they can weaponize the FBI in such a overt way. I mean, we knew when Hillary went in for that 3-hour interview with the FBI about it, and we knew nothing was going to happen. Nothing came of that.
There's a great discussion on that podcast yesterday about that, and they were saying that how they went into a skiff with a USB or with their phone and took photos and did all these things, and it was all criminal activity, right? If it was someone other than her, they would all be in jail. But Patrick also talks about on the show how you can fix a lot of the election problems and all of the falsehoods by using blockchain technology and allowing everybody to do a KYC on the front end. Because part of the problem that you have there in America is not everyone votes because it's not compulsory. Here in Australia, we have a robust election system and we have a robust election cycle as well. But I also believe that something else is happening there. We had a party here in Australia run by a guy named Clive Palmer. And Clive Palmer he's a billionaire, right? He spent $80 million on an advertising campaign to get people elected. Then he got 1 senator into Parliament. And so no amount of money could, buy people's ideas, and they couldn't buy their opinions. Yet he seemed to have massive support. I don't know, maybe that's because I'm inside of this echo chamber, but how could he spend so much money on these political campaigns? He outspent the major parties by an order of magnitude and only have 1 senator get there. I was just scratching my head wondering what's going on there. And so yesterday Patrick was saying one way to solve the problem of what would satisfy me is if I could look at the blockchain and say, well, how many people did vote for that party? How many people voted for this one and for this one? And you've got complete and total transparency and visibility of that happening. But I doubt that we're anywhere near that. I think we're still 15 years away from something like that happening.
Well, in theory, that sounds great. But
yeah.
I would have a couple of questions. All right. So whose blockchain are you using?
Well, the government's one. Come on, man.
Okay, then forget it. Then forget it. Then I have no interest.
Yeah, but you're going to have like a digital ID on your phone with your credits, so you better vote, otherwise you're not getting any credits. How many times do I have to tell you, Ed?
Yeah. So, and regarding that friend of yours who spent all that money, only got 1 person elected, he probably had the same consultant that Hillary used when she spent $1.5 billion. Spent $1.5 billion and Don spent 800,000. You should talk to Don. It's not how much money you have; it's how you spend it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think people like that, politicians and people of influence that have like a lot of money like that, I think they underestimate how much the population doesn't give a shit about politics. People are just like, whatever, man. I really don't care. I'm too busy going to work, going home, putting food on the table, looking after my family. I just don't care.
These elections every year is to a large degree, it's about the consultants getting paid. charging enormous amount of money.
Millions, man. Political
Millions.
strategists charging millions.
Right, advising people about the best place to place an ad, the best strategy. You should go after the millennials and say this. You should go after, and they had her going to Hollywood, bringing on all these Hollywood types, coming on TV and preaching to the American people about this and that. And that's the last thing that the average American likes. He doesn't like his celebrities preaching to him. Hey, ever hear that
Just
phrase?
go make your movies, man.
Yeah,
So-
shut up and sing. Right?
I like your music. I don't like your politics. Piss off.
But people like Hillary and Obama, they love that. They love the ego is
It's an ego.
has to constantly be stroked. So they and the people don't care about that. So you have to ask yourself: are you in this to have your ego stroked, or are you in this to get elected? And make up your mind, man. And Trump was smart. Now, listen, I think that if history is honest, history is going to treat Trump really well. Question is, who's going to be writing the history? But his statistics, he got a lot of really good stuff done. And say what you want about the guy, he was transparent. Okay, and that's because there, can you imagine somebody advising Trump on the best way to do a speech? You think he's going to give a flying squirrel with their advice? He's going to say what he wants to say.
And Sebastian Gorka does a good job of explaining that yesterday. One thing that he said, they'd start off by asking him, what's the fundamental problem we have in America? And he said, it's only one. There's a dividing line between people who love America and people who hate America. And he highlights several examples of that. And the reason that the Trump administration wasn't able to do more is because there was people in bureaucracy that just hate America, and they hated Donald Trump, and they hated everything he stood for. So they just railroaded all of his policies into something that they wanted rather than what he wanted. And it's really interesting. He quoted Michelle Obama, and he said the day that Barack Obama was sworn in, Michelle Obama said, "This is the first time in my life I've been proud of America."
Yep.
Well, what?
Yeah.
Why? Because you got what you wanted. Now you're proud of everybody. You didn't get what you wanted, so you threw your toys the whole time and said you should burn the whole place down. What? What an idiot!
Talk about a woman. There's a good example of a woman. Shut up. No one wants to hear from you. No one elected you. Just shut up.
Be quiet, yeah.
Go decorate the China room or something.
And not because you're a woman, because you just got nothing useful to say. Shut up, you're a useful idiot.
Like Bill Burr had a skit on this. I don't know if you ever seen it, but listen. So at some point in history, we are going to have our first female president, and we're going to have our first, male first lady. Okay, so he's got to shut up. He's got to go out and do some first lady stuff. No one wants to hear from you, man.
We had a female prime minister here in Australia.
What's that?
We had a female prime minister here in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, she was just as useless as the men. It doesn't matter what if you're a man or a woman. They're bloody as hopeless as each other.
Incompetence, right? Look, there's still a lot of people who think that Obama got elected because of identity politics, not because he was the best guy, for the job. It's, again, racism in reverse.
Tell me what you think about. Let's close out this bit on those personalities. What do you think of Kevin McCarthy, man?
Yeah,
has he been good for him?
I'm not a real fan.
I'll tell you what I'm a fan of. Somebody who can go in front of the media and actually string a sentence together and sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he can have if Kevin McCarthy was here on the call with us now, he'd be able to have a conversation that was, you could understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite of Joe Biden, where he's like, he can't string three sentences together because the guy is not right in the head, and he needs minders, he needs helpers. And Kevin McCarthy, like him or hate, and then there's a series of other politicians that I've seen in the last couple of weeks where I go, that's what people are supposed to be like. They're supposed to actually articulate a message and be able to communicate and everything. And I think the normalcy bias that I have around Joe Biden is just ridiculous. And I look at the normalcy bias that I have around Anthony Albanese, and I think this guy is just like Just a complete
Well,
idiot.
Barack Obama was as well spoken and as slick as they come, and he was evil incarnate. Okay, so just because someone is well spoken does not mean he necessarily has a good message. Now,
Yeah, but I just want someone to be able to put a sentence together.
well, that's a nice starter, right? Kevin McCarthy does have a history of, he does have kind of a weak backbone. He does have a history of caving on important conservative issues to the Liberal Party. He's the kind of guy that the Liberals say, I bet we can get him to go along with that. If we can get him. He is, I think the Democrats see him as someone is kind of like for sale in a way. We can get him to cave on that conservative talking point. We can get him. So, the jury is out on that. I don't have a high degree of confidence in him. He's not another Newt Gingrich. He's an establishment guy. He's a product of the machine. So he's more about scoring points than he is about, sticking to his ideals, and that's worrisome to a conservative and a traditionalist like me, and that's worrisome. And he's the kind of guy where I could see him caving at the last minute to get that debt ceiling. And the way he does it is he does authorize that $5 billion lesbian dance theater center in Iowa. I could see him doing it.
Whatever it takes, man. We just got to get it across the line, yeah?
Well, that's the problem. Whatever it takes. That's not a good match. That's not a good matchup for. I don't want to hear that from a politician. Whatever it takes. That's not.
Have you read the Chris Voss book? It's called Never Split the Difference.
No.
So the Chris.
You had me read that during Alpha Team.
No, I don't. Not that one. I don't think. I read that after. He was an FBI negotiator, and the crux of the book, spoiler alert, is whenever you're trying to negotiate with somebody, whether that's your missus or it's a terrorist, the number one word to use is how. Like, I want a helicopter and a bus, and I want to get out of here, and I'm taking the hostages with me. Well, how do you want me to do that? What sort of helicopter do you want? Which bus do you want? How do you want me to get the bus to you? How do you want me to get from point A to point B? How? And then the terrorist goes, oh, fuck, I never really thought. Just fucking sort it out, will you? Like this. And, when you look at the philosophy of never splitting the difference and you overlay that onto a politician, well, how do you want me to actually give you that $5 billion for the lesbian dance studio in Iowa? Like, how do you want me to do that? How do you want to execute on that? How do you want to make that happen? And then people are like, I never really thought it all the way through, did I? And like these shit circumstances that they get themselves into. These politicians could do well to read that Chris Voss book, I reckon. Never Split the Difference. I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. You should get that in your ears. It's actually really entertaining and quite fun.
Or maybe they can show that at the Republican Party orientation meeting for the new.
And bring Chris in to consult and show him how to negotiate properly. For heaven's sake, it's funny.
Why not?
Hey Ed, have you got any final thoughts as we close out the show here today? Have you got a closing remark or a quote that you can share with us?
Yes. And I kind of teased on it yesterday. That motivation is a scam. And
motivation's a scam.
Motivation is a scam. What I mean by that is, when I was a stockbroker, there were things that I had to get done in order to make a living. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what my objective was, and I knew what I had to do to get there. So there was no excuses, right? If you're an NBA player, I used to resent athletes getting paid all this money for what they do. But when you think about it, the odds that they beat in order to make it into that it is pretty amazing, and there's no room for excuses. If you want that championship ring, you got to go to the gym. You got to do those million free throw practice shots. You got to get up. You got to run. You got to do it. You got to step up and do it. And if you know that you got to lose 10 pounds, you know what you got to do. So, if you motivate yourself, you bring up your favorite YouTube videos and you go out and you have your run afterward. Motivation is short term. It'll last for you, maybe an hour, maybe a day. But then you got to start over again. You got to build a routine. If you decide you want to change your life, you know what you have to do. Write it down on Post-it if you want, and then you got to inculcate that into your lifestyle. You got to develop routine. I know, Rob, you go for a walk every single day, right? You have a routine. You know what you need to do to stay in shape and and every day you're doing what you have to do. So it's about developing a lifestyle and a philosophy about life, and stop making excuses. If you know what you have to do, everyone. If you don't, figure it out. Talk to Rob. He'll tell you what to do. And just get your head straight, come up with an objective, and then just do it. Develop habits that are going to get you there, and don't rely on these 30-second motivational videos on YouTube. Motivation is a scam. It's short-term. They're short-term fixes.
It is. When you join our community at theunspokenTruth.com.au, you'll find I've got a little masterclass in there. It's called Master Your Mind and Go All In. And it's my signature masterclass, and I talk about motivation and commitment in there as well. It's actually one of the modules. There's 7 modules there to help you to do those things. And motivation for me is what gets you started, and it's discipline that keeps you going. And I've discovered for myself personally over the years that motivation is something that is the reason that you feel shit, because you know you've got to go and do that thing, whatever that thing is. You feel shit because you're not doing that thing. Motivation is the ultimate irony in your life. I don't feel like going to the gym as I'm sitting on my ass, putting my shoes on. Oh, the last thing I feel like doing that. And then if you say to yourself, well, the reason you feel like shit is actually because you haven't been training today. And when you go train and you do that, you'll feel better after you've actually done that. So motivation is not something that's actually going to get you there. It's discipline that'll keep you going. Motivation will get you started because you're excited by it, but discipline will keep that momentum going for you as well. So good topic. I like that. We should do more of that on the end of this show. But let's wrap it up, and we'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Bye for now.
See you, Rob. See you guys.